What is up, my Lorcana Goons, and welcome back to the Lorcana Goons channel. You're watching our weekly Monday Meta Watch videos where Zach and I go over meta trends, what's topping our local tournaments, and even some mulligan strategies at the end of this video. This weekend, there is a bunch of huge tournaments hosted by tournament organizers like Charlie's Collectible Show and many more, and we've been able to kind of see what's been dominating the local meta. So we're going to go over some top 8 deck lists and the overall top 8 spread for a lot of these big tournaments. But we have this meta spread over here, this data compiled by inkdex.com. This is the website that we and a lot of Lorcana players use to keep track of like the tournament reports. Right now, Amber Steel looks like it's dominating the meta as a tier 1 deck, followed by Ruby Sapphire as another tier 1 deck, which is right behind it with a 12% meta share as opposed to 15 in the number 1 slot. Matching that is Blurple, Zach Stone, with a 127 total represented decks. So those are like the top 3 represented meta decks. There's another Amber Steel right here at 10%. That's more of an aggro Amber Steel. That's the list we've been seeing with Doc and Dwarves Mine, potentially maybe the new Lady Family Dog, right? We're gonna get into a lot of these deck lists. Overall, I like that Inkdex does this. It does kind of showcase as well that, you know, color combination does not necessarily mean that you're playing that exact deck, right, Zach?
This is a very good way to tell what the meta is going to shape up to be. But yeah, there's a lot of tournaments that happened this weekend, a lot of interesting results, and some cool decks that won some tournaments that we're going to talk about. So yeah, overall, the meta is very diverse. I love it.
Amber Steel best deck though is what it's looking like. I think the Rhino package is kind of taking over. You're an Amber Steel enjoyer, right, Zach? Do you feel like you're in the position of like I have the best deck of the format?
You know, it's interesting to point this out, but formats change almost every day because there's a lot of different development and people are just trying to answer what's doing really well that day and then into tomorrow. So the big one of them all, the Charlie's Collectible Show, I don't think there was a single Amber Steel in the top 8 on the Saturday, on the 11K event. So it was very interesting to see a complete flip on that tournament. It didn't do so well on that tournament. I still think it's on top as one of the best decks. It just might need to make some adjustments based on how people are responding to it.
I would agree. I think people are starting to realize Rhino's a really good card. They're kind of playing around that kind of stuff, you know. We don't have all the results for that Saturday Charlie's tournament. They actually just uploaded the results for the Sunday tournament, so we'll go over that and the winning deck list from Saturday too. I do want to point out for any budget Lorcana players, they also have the pricing of the average like deck list here, which is pretty chill with Emerald, Amethyst, and Amethyst Steel being some of the more cheaper options for any meta enjoyers out there. You know, it's a tier 2 deck. I would still constitute these as tier 1, especially after Amethyst Steel taking first place at the 11K on Saturday. Shout out Christopher Baxter for getting first place with his Amethyst Steel Broom deck, which we'll go over in the channel in a sec. But this was a 250 player plus tournament, Zach, and first place being Amethyst Steel. So even if you're playing, you know, like a tier 2 deck as people would consider it because of the overall meta spread, you know, you can still take first place in one of these tournaments, and this is why I love Lorcana, right?
So we have the deck list up here. This is the Amethyst Steel Broom deck that Christopher Baxter took to win the Charlie's Collectible Show 11K. So yeah, it looks pretty standard as far as Amethyst Steel cards go. I think what we're kind of not used to seeing, of course, is the additional Magic Broom, the Aerial Cleaner. This is a 2-cost 2/3 that does gain evasive during your turn. So in combination with some of the other removal cards that still has access to, and even Merlin Crab, you can even get rid of some Genie Wish Fulfilled, which I really like a lot. And you can deal with Maui Shark too, which is kind of cool. But Yen said the ultimate draw card for this deck, going turn 1 Magic Broom, it's very strong, and this kind of deck is a very lower to the ground deck. So if you're drawing cards very early, you're able to apply a lot of pressure, which I like a lot. It doesn't go as high as 4-cost cards. So we have the Merlin Goat and Genie that kind of cap out the deck. So you're just slamming a bunch of bodies, turning everything sideways, and forcing your opponent to answer you, which I really enjoy. This is a very solid deck list, but Kevin, I gotta ask your thoughts. And also, did you expect anything like this to win that event?
I wouldn't expect Brooms to necessarily win that event. I think Amethyst Steel has always positioned itself as a very like flexible deck for all the metas that we've been in the last like 2 or 3 sets. Our whole top row here is all 2 and 1 cost characters, so you're able to just kind of flood the board, refill your hand with Doc, which is really good. And since you're playing Amethyst, you can also refill your hand with friends on the other side. So I've always felt like there's more than enough in this color combo to win a tournament, especially in this current meta where you can kind of take advantage of playing 4 Pete. Pete's such a good card going into like Amber Steel, Ruby Amethyst, even like Ruby Sapphire, like Shark decks. Sometimes that Pete just closes the game out for you because you've been able to quest for 2 with your Smee for about 3 turns. Maybe you hit a giant cobra and you're getting 2 lore. You play a goat, you get more lore. Genie's quest for 2. What I really like about the Amethyst package is that it gets you from like 1 to 10 lore without your opponent even really realizing it, and then you're able to close the game out with some of these like heavy questers like Yen Sid, which can potentially quest for 3, and then you even have a Pete, which can stop them from getting nuked by a B prep. Along came Zeus, Strength, Storm. Really, like I think the hardest matches for this color combo is probably Amber Steel because they can pop your characters with their songs. However, you're playing so many low to the ground cards that at some point after you get to 4 ink, you could just start playing multiple characters every single turn, and you have Fire the Cannons too, so you could just out the Cindy, the Cinderella really quick, or even an opposing Diablo, which I love. Fire the Cannons is like I have like a love hate relationship with that card, man. Sometimes it's the best card in the deck, and sometimes the card's just buns. But Brooms, I was not expecting the Broom package to make an appearance though in Reign of Jafar set 8 before they potentially get rotated out.
There is a lot of room cards, and that Yensid is also in set 4, which, unless it gets reprinted, will not be in the competitive constructed format. But one thing I want to mention, Kevin, since we are talking about Reign of Jafar, and there is no new cards in this deck list. So it's very, I don't know. Did this set take off? Did this set change the meta? So yeah, this is just another thing I wanted to mention is that there's no new cards in this deck list.
And in top 8 of this huge 250 player tournament, we have Dragon John Z with a Ruby Sapphire deck list and item variant, as you can see, because we're playing 4 Scrooge McDuck in this deck list, which is a very powerful card. You can play it for free if you exert 4 of your items. And on play, look at the top 4 cards of your deck, grab an item. It's kind of like Ariel for your item decks. We haven't really been seeing a lot of the item decks pop off in the last couple weeks or so. I feel like a lot of the players are kind of gravitating more towards like a DKP Shark style kind of lists for Ruby Sapphire, but I have been seeing a very positive reviews, I guess you could say, of the Ruby Sapphire item deck, and I think this is a really good counter to Amber Steel. Amber Steel can be pretty aggressive, in the early game with their 2 lore questers. You have Rhino, Lawrence, Smee, stuff like that. But if you can stabilize, you can resolve some Sapphire coils, then those big Sisus are going to clear all of their 3 and 4 strength characters with ease. So I do like Ruby Sapphire as a meta call right now in this Amber Steel dominated meta. Zach, I know you kind of mentioned earlier, if Amber Steel's best deck, does that mean people kind of pivot to playing Ruby Sapphire? And then, what cards do you play in Amber Steel if you want to counter the Ruby Sapphire item strategy?
There is some cards that Amber Steel has access to, like I Find Them, I Flatten Them, and that's just a 4-cost Inkable Song that does banish all items in play. So it could be something you want to try out if this is going to be more of a response to the meta, but I'm not so confident that Ruby Sapphire items is going to be the best choice now because there's still a lot of different decks. You don't want to be caught in a mirror match without a lot of the necessary tools needed to defeat that matchup, and you kind of have to forego playing those if you're going to want to beat the other decks that are doing well in the meta. So it's a hard deck to build around, and I think unless you can really predict what you're going to be playing against, it might not be the best choice. And again, this is not something that I'm saying because I don't want to face any more Ruby Sapphires. It's just I actually don't always lose to Ruby Sapphire when I play Ember Steel. And you still have Pete. And Pete's a 3 strength character. There's a lot of other 3 or 4 strength characters that cannot be removed from play from Sisu. So I do want to point out that there is 2 copies of Great Storm Dragon, a card that we've only kind of seen as a one of. So more necessary items needed to get the ramping, as well as more cards to be able to draw with Maurice's Workshop as one of the main draw powers that this deck now has. But again, congrats to you. You're crushing it, Dragon John, with Red Blue, always letting people know that this deck is not out of the meta.
Yeah, go check out his YouTube channel too. I'll make sure to have a link in the description below. And all the deck lists you see here, we'll have the links in the description below as well. And while we don't have all the results for the Saturday tournament for the Charlie's Collectible show event, they did upload a lot of the results for the Sunday tournament. We have a pretty wide meta spread right here from the top 16, multiple different decks, some making an appearance more than once, like Blurple here in top 8 and top 16 by Big Tobacco and Lux Dankthor. From this tournament and from a lot of tournaments, a pretty open meta spread, which is cool to see. But this is the first place after Swiss list by No I'm Not, aka Kendall Burdett. Ruby Amethyst is one of the color combinations that he's most known for in Lorcana. Probably one of the people that's going to dictate what the future meta of this color combo is going to look like. I do feel like a lot of people have been playing the evasive strategy, the evasive package since last format, but we have a small appearance from one Reign of Jafar card, one copy of Hades, the Ruthless Tyrant. A very solid card to give you some consistent draw power, which I think is very needed for this deck if you're kind of taking more of the Genie evasive route. You know, Genie is not Merlin Rabbit. Merlin Rabbit will generate you a card when it's on play and when it leaves, so that's a lot of extra draw power that sometimes the deck needs, and maybe that one copy of Hades can really get you there to get the cards you need for this deck. But you're also playing Finders Keepers. I feel like Finders Keepers is also just a very strong power card at Ruby Amethyst right now, alongside Pirate's Life. These are cards that I think are kind of mandatory, whether or not you're playing the more control bounce package or you're playing this evasive strategy. Finders Keepers, Pirate's Life, I feel like one copy of Dragonfire, we're starting to see this as like a staple in a lot of the Ruby Amethyst decks. And also Iago Spectral Parrot, bro. Iago Spectral Parrot is such a strong card right now because every Amethyst deck I feel like needs to play this to combat the Genies, combat the ever evasive meta. And if you're not playing Steel, you know, this card sits on the board for a very long time.
100% that card is very strong. I'm surprised that's such a big body that has the evasive keyword, because that's really hard to deal with. We're seeing Ursula 2 drop again in this list, and I think that's becoming more of the norm as like an answer to the Rhino shift now that Ember Steel has access to. Again, Ursula plus Crab does deal with that very effectively. Overall, I think it's just Crab. I think Crab is the like bounce card right now that we're
You
going
need
to
4
talk
crab.
about, because there's 4 crabs and there's 3 foxes, and that usually wasn't the norm for a very long time. So the Challenger 3 buff is just very good to taking back tempo. I think you really need to kind of focus on those kind of cards being in a strategy like this. But I do want to talk about the Hades. It's not a card that I like, and I think they're just trying to play one to see how they feel about it. I like that it can sing "Be Prepared," because after you drop it, some people like are gonna get a little worried and can't let you draw a bunch of cards, so they're gonna try to flood the board or maybe aggro you out. We're looking at 3 copies of the library. Kevin and I have mentioned that locations don't feel like they're it right now in the meta. There's a lot of characters that have a lot of strength, a lot of ways to deal with locations right now, but it's a way to get more card cycle in. And if your opponent doesn't have the answers right away, you are getting a few passive lore from it. And in this kind of deck without goats might need the extra lore burst.
Yeah, I think if any deck plays locations right now, it's either Ruby Sapphire or Ruby Amethyst, because both decks can kind of slap of heavy location and hit you with the B prep, right? But other than that, I feel like there's a lot of rush, So you have Peter Pan, Shadow Finder. That's the really big thing about this deck, is that this Peter Pan will give every evasive character rush. So most locations don't survive a rush Maui half shark or Iago plus Elsa or stuff like that. So overall, congrats Kendall, once again putting Ruby Amethyst on the map at this tournament.
All right, and in another one of the top 8 deck lists from the 2K event, we got Lux Danixor over here with Blurple items. I mean, this has the Tamatoa happy as a clam. This also has the Ratigan, that greedy genius, and even Big Elsa, which I personally love to see in Blurple. That's just one of my favorite cards in this deck. I think being able to play like Elsa and then like bounce it back, replay Elsa is way too strong. You can win some games for like no reason because of that. Like I've actually lost games that I thought I was in complete control of because Big Elsa came down and then they bounced it and played it again next turn, and it quests for 3 and it's a very hard body to remove. Can't be killed by Zeus, can't be brawled, can't be Sisu'd. You are getting to play Monstros, and Ratigans is more of a 2 of because they are inkable. However, you do want to see them a little bit more often. But there's the Kita. This is the creative thinker from Arcasia's Island, so you have the additional ramping with Kita on top of your Tipos and Sails. So this deck can actually be able, cheat out a Ratigan as early as turn 5 or 6 if you get lucky enough. So I'm gonna just say that this deck could just come out with the gate very strong, very hot. I know a lot of people say Amber Steel is one of this deck's hardest matchups. If that deck is getting checked by Ruby Sapphire, then this deck could easily make a better comeback, as I think it's one of the powerful Amethyst decks.
I really like this deck list. I can't believe people say that this has a hard matchup against Amber Steel. Like, I would feel like you have a good Amber Steel matchup, right? Because you can kind of contest the early game with your own Bell Popsicle, and then you can start playing out stuff like Fox, Crab, to kind of get those tempo swings back. If you can ramp and get into some of these big bombs like Hades, the Elsa, the Monstro, I feel like the Amber Steel decks are cooked. I like this a lot. This is how I personally think Blurple is going to be played in the next couple weeks or so in this format. The ability to Lucky Dime your Ratigan is good. That is a good combo. You know, I feel like this Ratigan is a decent card. It reminds me of an Inkable Aerial Treasure Collector. You know what I mean? Aerial Treasure Collector can quest for 5. You have more items than the opponent, but you don't need that stipulation in this. Like, you don't need to play a full item deck now to kind of have that in your deck. You can and Ratigan's Inkable, and that's what I like about it, man. You can set up a Lucky Dime. You can play it for free with the Tamatoa Happy as a Clam. You slap a Ratigan on board, your opponent's gonna be worried. They're gonna be shaken. That's gonna be 8 lore you can gain per turn in the deck that is already generating a lot of lore from your 2 lore questers like Genie, Tamatoa, Bell, Hades. I really hope Hades gets reprinted in Fabled, bro. I think Hades is such a fair card. It's such a balanced card. You know, you can ramp into Hades, and when you Hades your opponent, they get ramped back. So it's kind of like you're evening the playing field. So I just hope this card gets reprinted. I think Hades is really what makes Blurple playable right now, because if you can't ramp into some removal bombs, then you really get got by decks like Amber Steel. And in top 16 of this tournament, we got to give a huge shout out to level 9001, aka Diego Sauce, aka the champion of the DLC that happened in Toronto. If I'm not mistaken, right? It was a Toronto DLC, right? Yeah, man, playing the Diablo deck, the Emerald Amethyst Diablo shift package right here with the wrong lever, pull the lever combo, which I think is very strong. This format, if you guys have ever played the One Piece TCG, this is a 3-cost Red Rock, and I think that's insane, right? And you can set this up very effectively by discarding it from your hand using your Diablo shift ability. Maybe you're playing something like what's that one, Strike a Good Match in your deck as well, which you can use to discard it, or Yzma, stuff like that. But there's some synergy in this deck, which I really like to see.
I will like to mention too that this deck does play the chip. That's the 4-cost card that does discard a card when you play him. So you have a lot of discard tools like Sudden Chill. Don't forget the pull the lever. It does have an option where you can make each opponent discard a card. It's actually not even that bad of a card. Wrong lever is still able to bounce something, so it's just a hard castable Mother Knows Best, but you do play discard cards. What if they have no cards in hand and you wrong lever something and Sudden Chill it out, and you have Prince John in play? You're going to get free cards from that. So it's very good removal, a lot of utility. I think what Emerald Amethyst does best is disrupt the opponent, all while gaining a lot of card advantage.
We have another big tournament to go over, Zach. This was a 158 player tournament by the NJDS La Rochelle, hosted right there. I believe this is French, if I'm not mistaken. We have the top 8 over here split between a variety of decks. We have 2 Blurple and 2 Ruby Amethyst Evasives, 2 Ruby Sapphire, and 2 Amber Steel. A pretty even spread there, 2, 2, and 2. I like to see it. Let's go over some of these decks. Here we have a top 8 list, an Amber Steel aggro. This is kind of something we were talking about in the beginning of the video. Different ways you can play Amber Steel, whether or not you're playing like Whole New World, Beyond the Horizon song package, or maybe you're playing Doc to use as your extra draw engine. This list is playing Lady, the family dog, and Goofy, the groundbreaking chef, which is not a card I see very often in Amber Steel. I think what you want to do with this deck is set up early game lines of maybe Daisy turn 1, turn 2 you play 2 1-drops like Cindy and a Rhino, and then you can start shifting your Rhino, singing songs like Strength of a Raging Fire, Storm Rage On. I like the copy of Prince right here, the 4 copies of Prince the Vigilant Suitor. The Vigilant Suitor, that's his name. He's a 2-cost uninkable, 0 strength, 5 willpower with bodyguard. That 5 willpower is pretty important right now in this meta. A lot of 4 strength characters. People are playing that Ursula we were just talking about, and you know you're gonna want to be able to combat those kind of cards with this Prince. Maybe they're gonna need to answer this Prince the same way they answer Rhino, which is gonna be a 3 strength character plus a crab. You know, and if they don't have that available back to back, then they're gonna have to answer your Prince and your Rhino, which is kind of scary.
I do think it's kind of important to mention this Penny Bolt's Person. This is a 2-cost dual link inkable 1/2 with 2 lore, but it does allow you to give a chosen character resist +1 and I believe remove up to 2 damage from it. So you're going to be able to trade pretty well into a lot of other boards, but I like being able to like remove a 3 strength character with Rhino and then re-readying it and healing it with the Goofy because we're cooking over there, you know what I mean? And if you are not the aggressive Amber Steel player, we do have a deck list second place by TSI Niche from this same tournament. But we again see the Rhino package again. The Shift Rhino package is just in almost every Amber Steel deck I've seen. I'm playing Shift Rhino. My friends are playing Shift Rhino. So Shift Rhino's here to stay, but we have Prince Naveen and the songs. So we have Whole New Worlds, Zeus's, and the Beyond the Horizon. This is a very greedy list, but I like it. I like greed in this kind of meta right now because you're going to need some ways of getting lucky. And one of the better ways to do it is to be able to like Whole New World your opponent, then to Beyond the Horizon them right after, rip their 7 cards and turn it into 3, all while maintaining your hand advantage and being able to play any deck like this alongside Pete in your card pool is very strong.
I like Grab Your Swords a lot in this current meta. I think Beyond the Horizon is a very strong card. It feels kind of hard to fit it in with an Amber Steel deck sometimes because of the uninkable count. I know you just mentioned Lantern, but the first thing I think about is, ooh, that card's also uninkable. But overall, the Amber Steel deck has changed a lot from set 1 to now, right? Playing Amber Steel in set 1, yeah, the best play in the game was Stitch, New Dog, Lantern, Shift, Stitch, turn 3. Then you can start singing your songs on turn 4. You can start playing all your 1-cost weenies, your 1-cost Goons characters, bro. Remember I used to play copies of Goons in the deck back in the day, and now it's just an entirely different deck, bro. Like, you know, all of your characters are pretty much inkable except your Prince Naveen, which I think is crazy because there was a point in time where you used to have to play a lot of uninkable characters in this deck and it felt kind of mandatory, and now your uninkability comes from your songs, so you can kind of play with your song ratios, you know, for Zeus, for Whole New World, the Beyond the Horizon, which we were just mentioning, and then you can, you know, maybe you can fit in the lanterns now, cut the Naveens, and kind of play around with the deck. There's so many good cards in this color pool. And I think that's why we're seeing such like high representation of Amber Steel right now in the current Lorcana meta, because there's so many power cards right now. So many power cards. I really like the ability to play Grab Your Swords off of the Prince Naveen though. Part of me wants to build this deck and play 2 Grab Your Swords to deal with those pesky Emerald Steel players. There are a lot of the Amethyst decks that kind of leave their cards sideways when they shouldn't. You can really punish them with the Grab Your Swords that you're not reading, right? All right, we have another tournament very quickly to go over. A 94-player 5K hosted by the Safari Zone Collectibles. Shout out you, these wonderful tournament organizers. We have a pretty interesting top 8 for this one, mostly Emerald and Amber Steel. First place was Aaron Guy over here with Amethyst Emerald. Then we have 1, 2 Amber Steels in the top 8 alongside another Amethyst Emerald, an Amethyst Steel, and an Emerald Steel. No Ruby or Sapphire in this top 8 over here. Let's go ahead and check out some of these deck lists. In top 4 of this tournament, we have a very spicy Amethyst Steel deck list by Michael Arroyo. Huge shout out to you, playing cards like Desperate Plan, which we haven't seen in any top deck list yet. Usually we're seeing Doc in the Amethyst Steel strategy like we saw in the Broom deck, but this list does not play Doc. It looks a little bit more, at first I thought it was mid-range, but then I'm seeing White Rose and Goats and Cobras, so it's kind of like aggro and then Fire the Cannons. It's pretty cool. The highest cost character you have is going to be Elsa, so it's a 5-cost character, so you can probably stop inking at 5, right? You can start the game off with some early aggression using your 1-cost characters to quest and draw, like Broom and Chernobog and Diablo, and then you have some pretty strong 2-lore questers like Smee and Calhoun, which could potentially net you 2 lore through a challenge, right, Zach?
Yes, and you mentioned right with the White Rose and the Goats, you have that extra burst of lore. I do want to point out that we are playing Fire the Cannons, only 2 copies in this list because it's again a good response like Cinderella's or the one-drop Rhinos, kind of delay that initial pressure early on. I think we kind of cap out Elsa as more of like a response to certain evasive strategies. I know Ruby M evasive is starting to get very popular, and again, that plus Crab does deal with the Maui Shark. So I like that they're including just a couple copies, or 3 copies, because you might need the tools. The one Desperate Plan is Chef's Kiss. I do want to see more people experiment with like more copies of Desperate Plan and then playing like the Disguised Soldier Mulan in like a strategy like that, because I think Desperate Plan's almost a very good enough card to almost build a deck around.
Oh, I agree. I 100% agree. If we were building decks around Doc, there's no way we can't build a deck around Desperate Plan. I do want to add like that you can play the Mulan to have some cycle in your deck. You could also play the Simba. I believe is the Future King. I like Amethyst Steel, man. I think you can play this deck a variety of ways in this current meta, so that's really cool to see. So if you're someone who enjoys the kind of mid-range style of playing, this is probably the deck for you. Huge shout out to Johnny, by the way, from my local area, who comes to our booth, who's been piloting his Amethyst Steel deck because he really likes the idea of like being able to have card advantage and board advantage, and I think this is the best deck to do that.
Again, more draw power coming from the Amethyst package alongside Emerald here. We have Aaron Guy's first place list from the Stavari Zone Collectibles tournament. Again, shout outs to you guys. I know you guys are hosting a lot of tournaments in that area. I honestly see this every month, like a 5K or a case tournament, something from Safari Zone. So shout outs to you guys there. But we got the Diablo package. We got what? 14 copies of the Diablos, and Gogo Tamago is in this list. And this is a little different than the Amethyst Emerald list that we saw earlier, but we are including the Pull the Lever, Wrong Lever package. But we got some cool actions like Improvise and Hypnotic Strength to be able to deal with the board a little bit better. Keep in mind that these are actions that Diablo can discard, so you can shift a little bit better early on. And these are good answers to illusion characters because they let you choose a character, you draw a card, and it's basically a free removal tool if that's what they're playing in any deck list of theirs. But the Elsa is in there as well, as we saw from the Amethyst Steel deck list, and the Ursula, the Sea Witch Queen, is very powerful against the Amber Steel decks that are taking over the meta right now, and you can shift it over the 2-drop Ursula, so it's a hard card to deal with. I do like to playing 2 copies of Cricky. I like that decks that are kind of going a little bit more wider in their lower to the ground strategies include a copy or 2, because it allows you to deal with some board presence, take back some tempo needed to win those very, very close games. But overall, this is a solid list. I think, going back and forth between last week's video and this week's video, we're seeing different developments of the Amethyst Steel strategy take over. But Kevin, do you like a deck like this? Do you like playing cards like Cricky and the Sea Witch Queen and Emerald Amethyst?
I do. I do like Cricky. I think Cricky is a power card right now, especially when you're on the draw. Sometimes Cricky can kind of sway the tempo back in your favor, and I do feel like this is a deck that takes advantage of that tempo. I do want to mention that this deck list looks very different than the Diego Sauce list we just looked at a little while ago. His list looked a little bit more like discard oriented because you had and song oriented, right? Because he played Heffalumps and Woozles, Muses, and Prince Johns. This list a little bit more like tempo, fight for the board, get some good value trades in kind of deck, which I like a lot too. Hypnotic Strength is a card I want to mention that's being used right now in the current meta alongside Improvise, right? Hypnotic Strength is cool and Improvise are cool because you can out the opposing Iago Giant Spectral Parrot, or any Vanish character for that matter. But Iago is probably the most powerful Vanish/illusion character that's in the metagame right now, and Hypnotic Strength and Improvise will both draw you a card on play. You can target the opposing Iago, and then it's banished at the end of the resolution. One of the cool things too about this is that it lets you kind of swing into problematic cards like Daisy Duck in the early game. You can set up certain lines where you shift Diablo, play Hypnotic Strength. Now your Diablo can swing for 4, which is pretty cool. Maybe your Diablo, the Raven, the Spiteful Raven over here, he has Challenger +2, so he already swings for 3. You use that with Hypnotic Strength, +2 Strength. Now that Diablo can, clear a Shift Rhino, which is really powerful. Also, I've seen people toy with the idea of playing Royal Guard in this color combination. That's the 1-cost Octopus character. I'm sure you've seen it, Zach, from Rain and Jafar. He's a 1 strength, 2 willpower character, but every time you draw a card, he gains Challenger +1. So you'll be able to draw for turn. That's Challenger +1. You play Hypnotic Strength, you draw a card. That's another Challenger +1. Then you give him Challenger +2 on top of that. So this little guy will swing for Challenger +4 with this combination. So I do like that we're seeing some very nice combos in response to the early meta of Rain and Jafar. Like you said last week, people were not playing these cards, and now we're starting to see the power of like these Iago Spectral Parrots. So we're seeing the response to that, and I like it a lot. So huge shout out Aaron Guy getting first place with your green purple deck. Next up, we have a 60-player tournament organized by Lorcana Fran and the Hungry Dragon. Huge shout out to you guys. We know how much effort goes into making these tournaments go down, so thank you so much, Lorcana Fran and Hungry Dragon, for hosting Lorcana tournaments for our local Southern California area. But look at this, Zach Stone. In this top 8, not a lot of not a lot of green decks, not a lot of emerald decks in this top 8. We have three Blurple in this top 8, alongside, what is it, 3 Amber Steel and 1 Ruby Amethyst in the first place list, with a Ruby Sapphire also in top 8. Some of these lists I'm very excited to go over because we have some personal friends of ours. Huge shout out to James, huge shout out Izzy and Eddie for making top 8, and everybody in the SoCal community for being Lorcana Goon squad supporters. We know who you guys are. But this is the list that I was most excited to talk about from this tournament. This is a top 8 list from the 60 player tournament by Izzy Barrera over here, getting top 8 with a very spicy Amber Steel list titled Desperately Aggro. I love to see it. Zach, it's exactly what you just said. 4 copies of Mulan, the Disguised Soldier, and we're playing 3 copies of Desperate Plan, 4 copies of Doc Bold Knight, which is very powerful. You have just so many draw power cards alongside your little weenie characters that you can spam on the board, right? And huge shout out to my boy Carlos, because we've been trying to make this pop off in tournaments. We have 3 copies of Vinny, the Green Pigeon. This is a 3-cost uninkable character, 1 strength, 4 willpower, that says during your opponent's turn, whenever one of your characters is banished, you gain 1 lore. So this definitely synergizes with this plan of being desperately aggro. You can set up some very powerful lines where you go Daisy into maybe a Lilo or a Smee, or even the Penny. You start questing for 2, 4, you play Lady, and then you play a Vinny the turn before they're going to shift Sisu or Be Prepared you. That means if they end up clearing your board, this Vinny will recognize that all your other characters were banished, and you'll still gain all that lore. Love to see it. And even Doors Mine here for some little location action, right?
Yes, I do want to actually go ahead and point out that this has no Cinderella Ballroom Sensation, no Strength of a Raging Fire, no Let the Storm Rage On. We only have
No
7
songs.
Dwarves Mine.
No
Yeah,
songs.
we only have 7 Dwarves Mine as a way of removing or dealing damage to the characters outside of challenging, of course. But just want to also go on record and say that this deck list was not something I looked at before I mentioned what I mentioned before with the Mulan and the Desperate Plan, but it's good to see great deck builders cooking these strategies, because my ideas, I kind of don't really try or experiment a lot of them. I more think about it than I don't really have time to. But Vinny is a very, very, very good card. I just think that that's a card that's going to have its moment to shine depending on how the meta shapes up. I do want to go ahead and point out that Lilo, the escape artist, and Vinny sounds very annoying, because if you're bringing back your Lilo,
Yeah.
and if you're not removing that Lilo, they're going to quest for 2. But if you do remove Lilo, they're going to gain a lore. And there's no way around it. Being able to play the body for free every turn just means you're gaining a lore, at least 1 bit of lore on the following turn. I do like the fact that it does play the groundbreaking Chef Goofy. This is a card that I think is going to see a little bit more play later on into the way the meta develops. Pete is just the staple. Pete probably should get banned, if I'm being very honest with you, but overall, it's just a nice deck list from a very awesome deck builder.
Huge shout out to Eddie Z, aka Sudden Chilla, aka one of the members of the Lorcana Cookout channel, for getting top 8 with the Blurple deck with Rafikis. We have 2 of the 1-cost Rafiki and 1 of the 4-cost Rafiki. Surprised we're now playing Shift Rafiki at this point.
Well, if we played Shift Rafiki, we might need to play some other cards, but we are including the Peter Pan Shadow, not the Shadow Finder. I do like the Tamatoas being in this list, but there's no Lucky Dime like the last list, so you don't need to always play expensive items with the clam.
And the last tournament to go over today, we have a 70-player tournament from the Playing Ducks tournament here. First place, we have PB Bennett. Shout out you for getting first place with your yellow-green singer song deck. We have multiple copies of Lost in the Woods alongside some other songs in this deck to really make your muses pop off. And you can even do some crazy combos where you end up using your Shift Kita to lower the strength of all the opposing characters, and then Under the Sea, which is the reason why you see 4 copies of Under the Sea in this deck. And if you've been playing Lorcana for a while, you know that this is not anything new, but if you're kind of just coming into the game, this deck is a very strong deck. It actually won a DLC, and I'm not surprised to see it still doing wonders in the current meta. 1 copy of Tramp, the Street Smart Dog, and 1 copy of Chip, the Quick Thinker, to help with that discard engine, right?
Yeah, I'd actually love the Tramp in a deck like this, because you're probably going to have a lot of characters in play, and you might need to be digging for your Under the Sea combo. So it's a nice addition. I actually do like that they're playing Tramp, but there is no 1-drop Kita to shift the Kita early, which might be necessary too in this meta. But It's good to see that they're just trying some stuff out. There's some decent one-ofs, and of course the Cricky's there to show up again.
And another Emerald Amber deck list in top 4 by Ziegenbach over here. But this is different. We finally get to go over a Turnadog deck list, Zach Stone. Love to see it. Shout out you for getting top cut in this tournament. 70 players, dude, and we have a yellow-green Turnadog finally in the top cut. This list is looking a little different than some of the lists that we had been seeing about 2 or 3 weeks ago with the just-in-time build. This one a lot more relative to the list we were seeing last format, right? We have the Lady Elegant Spaniel and the Decisive Dog alongside some more heavy questers like Piglet, the Pooh Pirate Captain, Cursed Merfolk, our new Lady Family Dog, and look at this, 3 copies of the Observant Guardian Tramp, which is a character that on play can give one of your characters ward. Maybe you give it self ward so that you can shift into the Tramp Dapper Rascal, which a lot of people say is a a lot of people thought was going to be like an amazing card. And as testing went on, some people said, "No, we're not going to play this card." But this list looks like you want to max out on the ability to play this Tramp, right?
Yeah, I do want to just mention one thing. I like being able to go with 5 ink, you can go Piglet, then you can play Tramp, give that Piglet ward, and that's very scary. Being able to just for sure quest for 3 on the following turn, or even giving that Lady ward because she can also quest for 3 when she has enough characters that you play with alongside her. But this is also another thing to mention that Chernadog got a lot of support from this set and is not showing up that we thought we would. So we always have to take a second guess about what's going to do well based on what we see being revealed on new sets.
No, yeah, I agree. I remember when Tramp Dapper Rascal got revealed, DKP, a special shout out DKP, tweeted that it was going to make the deck overpowered and all this other stuff, and we're just not really seeing the deck pop off the way we thought it would, right? And it's funny because last format, this had like such a good matchup against Amber Steel, but now with the Rhino stuff going on, you actually don't have the best matchup anymore. So it's funny how the decks change in terms of their power level from set to set. But let's go ahead and start a mulligan strategy session with one of these decks, shall we? All right, my Lorcana Goons, if you're still watching this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for some free knowledge that we're about to drop on you because you're not paying through Medify for this. We're going to go ahead and mulligan with our Amethyst Steel Broom deck, the first place list from the 11K tournament that happened. Let's go ahead and look at this hand, shall we? We have 2 1-cost characters, Broom and Chernabog followers. Then we have Mistress Me, followed by Crab, Pete Games, Madam Mimfox, and a Merlin Goat. So with Amethyst Steel, my personal strategy, especially if I'm going first and I'm going blind, I don't know what the matchup is, I really want to see a variety of 1 and 2 cost characters. Pete is a very good card, however, it's kind of matchup dependent, right? Against certain decks, I want Pete in the late game. I don't want Pete necessarily in the early game against some of the Ruby Amethyst or Ruby Sapphire decks, but against Amber Steel, I kind of do want it in kind of the mid to early game. So it's a card that we play 4 of, so I feel very confident putting it back into the deck because I tell myself, you know what, I will draw it again when I need it. And Goat is the same thing. It's a card we want to see much later in the game to kind of close the game out. You either keep 1 Crab or 1 Fox. I don't think you keep both if you're going first, especially if you don't know the matchup. So not knowing the matchup means I won't keep them. If we're going second though, we probably keep either 1 Crab or 1 Fox, and it's probably Crab because Turnabog plus Crab can clear the Rhino, and that's very important to remember.
Yeah, I think I'm keeping Crab, and it's just because of the way the metap's kind of developing. Again, you are playing friends on the other side in this deck, so being able to play Crab on turn 3, even just as a body, to sing friends on your following turn might be necessary to just get more card draw. You are playing Brooms and Yin Sid, so you can find more card draw as well as on turn 4. I don't think we put back Crab because it's also just an inkable card. Having the flexibility of being able to play it as a body or as a tool to remove other characters and play, I think is what's really necessary right now in this meta. So let's put back the Fox, the Pete, and the Goat, and let's see the new 3 cards.
Okay, so our 3 cards were Diablo, Friends on the Other Side, Chernabog Followers. Zach, it's like you said, you could always draw seeing the Friends on the Other Side if you're not playing the Amber Steel matchup, or maybe even if you're not playing the Emerald matchup, right? You don't have to ink your friends, which is pretty interesting. I do like that we drew multiple 1-cost characters, because that's kind of what I thought was really important to see. We want to potentially play a Chernabog on turn 1, followed by a Chernabog and a Broom on turn 2, because if our opponent does decide to shift the Rhino and maybe sing a song, we're going to have 2 Chernabogs on board if they do that, meaning our crab will get some very good value there. So I think one of the best things to do with your purple engine is to be able to set up a lot of small characters so you can get some heavy value with your challenges with crab, fox, or maybe even start preparing to utilize them to sing with a 3 cost character, your Strength of a Raging Fire, as the game progresses, right? So let's go ahead and pick another hand, shall we?
One thing, maybe with this deck, you would probably favor keeping the broom instead of playing it on turn 2 because you are playing Yen Sid, and that's another way of just getting extra card draw.
Okay, here we have another hand. This consists of Doc, Mr. Smee, Madam M Fox, Pete, Diablo the Raven, Aerial Cleaner Broom, and Illuminary Keeper Broom. Off the top of my head, one of the first things I think about is we have double broom in hand. This Yen Sid would pop off if we can see it. You know what I mean? And we even have a decent curve of 1 broom on turn 1, second broom on turn 2. However, it doesn't feel like it's enough against like some of the Sapphire matchups, right? Like if I were to dump everything and only keep the brooms, if I played against a Ruby Sapphire deck and I didn't see a 2 lore quester, I would be sad. So I kind of want to keep Smee no matter what. But after this, I'd be down to just keep these 2 brooms and the Smee. This is a very good out to Diablo as well. So that's kind of the reason why I'm like, ooh, Broom Aerial Cleaner in my opening hand. If we play against an Emerald deck, I suddenly just have a Diablo out, which I think is good. I'm totally down to not keep Pete, Fox, Doc, or Diablo in my hand because if I have this Broom here, I really want to see the Ensid.
Yeah, I think it's good to mention too that like you want to have a little bit of flexibility in your 2 drop slot because leaning more on one side could get punished against another side. Overall, though, there might be a world where you do want to keep the Diablo because you can go turn 1 drop, turn 2 2 drop, turn 3 2 and 1 to even out the curve a little bit better. So I think that's the only debate there. If you were going second with a hand like this, I think the only other questionable card that you have to decide is Fox, right? If you know
Yeah.
the matchup number Steel, you might be able to keep Pete on when you're going on the draw. But overall, if you're on the play, this seems solid. And let's run it. Let's see if we can find the NSAID.
Yes, let's see it. Okay, we did not. We only put 3 back. We kept the Diablo, which I think you made a good point. You know, it's good to have some versatility there. But we have a Fire the Cannons, Box Followers, and a Genie now to kind of go off that. Not too many Uninkables, which is really good in our opening hand. And this deck in general doesn't play too many Uninkables. It's really just the 4 Doc, the 3 Genie, and the 3 Fire the Cannons. So I feel like most of the time you're gonna have a solid curve or like a solid line of play, which is really nice. And yeah, man, we have multiple Diablo outs. I think if we're playing against Amber Steel, I would feel pretty confident. I really like what you said earlier, Zach, about how you can use Fire the Cannons to kind of shoot down the Rhino before they shift it. I think that's super important. And if we're going first, we can set up a clean line where you play a 1 cost character. If they play a Rhino or a Cindy, then that means we can respond with the Fire the Cannons plus a Diablo or something. And then you even said it, turn 3, we play 1 cost plus Mr. Smee or 1 cost plus Magic Broom, depending on the matchup. Love to see it. Love to see it. Okay, another hand, Saxstone. Let's say we're going second. Let's say we're going second blind. We don't know what we're playing against, but this time we are on the draw. Our opening hand is going to be Strength of a Raging Fire, Fire the Cannons, Friends on the other side, Magic Broom, Box Followers, a Yen Sid to complement that Magic Broom, and a Giant Cobra, the Ghostly Serpent. So I'm going to give my opinion first, Zach Stone. If we're going second, I immediately want to keep this Fire the Cannons. I want to keep my 1 drop characters, and I don't necessarily like keeping songs going first or going second if we're blind. There's just so much risk, I think, facing against the Emerald decks nowadays, where the Ursula package can just kind of completely disrupt your opening hand or your first 2 turns. Part of me doesn't want to keep this Yen Sid though because we're going second, and it's a little harder to quest for 3 when you're going second because this body is pretty weak. It's only a 1/3, so it can potentially get cleared by a purple mirror match, right? If our opponent is playing foxes and crabs, there's a pretty high chance I'm not going to quest with this Yen Sid. But I do like that we drew them with the broom, so you know, turn 1 broom, turn 2 Yen Sid, draw a card. I can't complain there. So I think I would just put back our friends and our strength. I want to keep Giant Cobra because if we're going second, being able to play a 3 cost character with a 4/4 body could potentially just slow the game down a little bit more in our favor. What do you think?
Well, when you're on the draw and if you have no knowledge of the matchup, with Amber Steel being more of the prevalent match, decks to face against, I think what you mentioned about the Fire the Cannons is a good starting point of how you want to shape your hand up to be. However, I think we're a little too greedy keeping. I don't want to keep the broom and I don't want to keep the inset. I think what we want to find is we want to find a little bit more of like a stronger bodies So I do like you mentioned keeping the giant cobra because it's a very strong body you can play on turn 3. If it so happens to be where it's like a red blue matchup and fire of the cannons is useless, that's a card you can discard and just gain 2 lore with no problem, right? But if that wasn't the case, if let's say giant cobra wasn't in this hand, do you still keep fire of the cannons? It's a little hard to figure out without knowledge of the matchup. And I think it's better to lean on that. You don't want to run that risk either. So without Giant Cobra, I wouldn't keep Fire the Cannons, but I want to find a little bit more. I need some crabs. I need some foxes. So let's put back some more cards and increase our chances, shall we?
Yeah, I agree with you. I do want to put back. I do want to see more foxes and crabs. However, if that's the case, I would definitely keep the broom. I think especially if you like are expecting a heavy Amber Steel matchup, you just want to see one cost characters in the beginning because being able to bounce back your fox, being able to have a crab target is so important. And most of the
And
time, you're not gonna be able to resolve that if you play a 2 cost character on turn 2. You're gonna need to play 2 1 cost characters on turn 2. The like playing a 2 cost character is like I just had nothing else to do in my opinion at least. So I would be down to just put these 3 back and keep the giant cobra. But I mean, we even put back the cobra and try and see a fox or a crab there because against Amber Steel, the cobra just also gets shot down and banishes. This is a tough one. Let us know what you think in the comments below because I have like slightly differing opinions than Zach. There's even a world where we just say no, we don't keep this fire with cannons, but I would keep it just because I feel like there's a lot less Ruby Sapphire in my local meta. Even the Blurple matchup, I like fire the cannons because you can shoot down some of their fox targets too, and you can kind of start questing. So I would keep it without the cobra. But Zach, are you in agreement? Should we put back just these 3? Let us know in the comments what you guys think. Is this cool with you, Zach, or what else do you want to put back? You really want to put the broom
yeah,
back, huh?
I mean, you made Chernobog's followers and Merlin Crab dealing with the Rhino, but you have Fire the Cannons deal with the Rhino. It's too tough. It's too tough. But I don't like keeping both of the 1-drops. I think one of them's got to
Okay.
go. So I'll let you pick
Okay.
which
Well,
one's got to go.
no, yeah. Well, we're putting back the broom if we need to, but let's see what happens. And okay, so we did see a second. See, this is what I was talking about. If against Amber Steel, you're right though. Against Amber Steel, it's fine because we do have the fire, the cannons. But yeah, man, part of me just feels like I would have wanted the third 1-drop here, so that on turn 1 I can play a 1-drop. On turn 2 I can play 2 1-drops, just in case we decide maybe we
You
don't need to
you
fire the
have three
cannons at
one
Rhino.
drops. You have 3 1-drops. If they're playing red blue, then you only have 2. But if they're not,
Yeah.
then you have 3 1-drops.
No, yeah, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying, and we ended up seeing 3 cobras and a crab. I think that's also what's important too. Having this crab line alongside with this cobra. So now we have some flexibility, man. On turn 3, if our opponent, if we decide to use fire the cannons and clear one of their characters, and then on turn 3 they don't have any exerted characters, we go with the cobra line. We don't even have to ditch to gain 2 lore. We could just play it as a big body. I like having multiple cobras too against certain matchups because let's say they out one of them. What are the odds they have multiple songs they can just sing back to back to back to out your cobras? It's a 4/4 body for 3 ink. That's very strong. But yeah, I like this. I kind of like. I like we've been going back and forth in our opinions with this deck, and I think this Amethyst Steel Broom deck really is the business. What do you think?
Yeah, I think what you have in this hand is a lot of flexibility because let's say they do Cindy turn 1. You can safely deploy your Diablo. If they sing Storm Rage on and get rid of it, you're still getting the card replacement, right? On turn 2, you can go Followers, fire the cannons to Cindy. And now you have something to be able to like check like a Mr. Smee if that's what's going to be in play. Or they could even have like a Troubadour or a Vanessa. Let's say they like get a little greedy and sing other songs or just turn it sideways in quest. You can severely punish them with this crab now. So it does get a little bit more flexible with that, and I do like that you just have multiple cards you can just ink no problem. And if it is against Amber Steel, like you did say, the Giant Cobra isn't the best card against that right off the bat. So yeah, this hand's looking solid, guys. Again, in the comments down below, let us know if there's anything you guys would have done different, mulliganing wise, or even just adding into like what other thoughts you can think about when making these decisions. Because again, mulliganing is one of the most important parts of this game. It's literally like the that and the first 2 turns that you're inking and playing cards rather than the whole rest of the match. It's literally like your mulligan and your first like 3 cards you decide to play and put in your inkwell.
But that's going to be all for this Monday Meta Watch video. Thank you, my Lorcana Goons, our Lorcana Goons, excuse me, Zach, for being here and watching till the end. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you guys want to support the channel. Remember, guys, we do live streams on Wednesdays and Thursdays. There's more ways to support the channel. Be sure to stay tuned for our Friday Market Watch videos and anything else we do so we can go over the Lorcana metagame. But yeah, that's going to be all for this video, everyone. Amber Steel still on top right now, followed by Ruby Sapphire, Blurple, making big waves, and we're still seeing Emerald, Steel, Emerald, Amethyst, and Ruby Amethyst still seeing some pretty good results in these tournaments.
Yes, and it's a good way to kind of check or see what's being played and how the meta is shifting and developing because again, formats change every single day. So make sure to join our Discord server so you guys can talk about what deck lists you guys want to bring to your next local tournament. And don't forget, guys, in about 2 weeks we have the world's competitors playing in the World Championship. So make sure you guys are watching the live stream, getting it coordinated with a lot of your local game store members, and let's just see some good Lorcana players play some Lorcana. So again, thank you guys for watching the content. As always, like, comment, and subscribe if you do want to support the channel. And until then, stay tuned to Lorcana Goons.
And we'll see you goons next time. So while editing the video, Charlie's dropped the deck list for the top 8 of this 250 player tournament. This was the tournament that we went over the Brooms deck list for first place. And second place, we see a Ruby Sapphire item deck looking very similar to the deck that we just went over the following day. Pretty nice to see Ruby Sapphire still doing a lot in this current meta. In third and fourth place, we have two very different looking green-purple lists. This one is by Thomas Vu, third place, with some evasive characters like the Pegasus Gift for Hercules. We also have 3 copies of Flynn Rider, which is something I haven't really seen in a while in this meta. This list looks a little bit different. Top 4 by Dan Snyder. Shout out you guys. A little bit more aggressive here. We have the White Rose alongside Merlin Goats, but both lists are playing the Ursula Sea Witch Queen. Very important to note there. I feel like this Ursula Sea Witch Queen is starting to make a very big impact in this meta. But yeah, a couple deck lists we wanted to go over before we finish this video for you guys. Shout out Charlie's Collectible Show for hosting one of the biggest tournaments of the Reign of Jafar format so far. Just like Zach said earlier, there wasn't a single Amber Steel in this top 8, mostly consisting of Ruby Sapphire for this top 8. I don't know, I think Ruby Sapphire is making big waves in this meta. After Amber Steel, you know, being popularized as one of the best decks, Ruby Sapphire naturally combating it because it is one of the hardest matchups. And real quick, I want to give a shout out to this top 8 Ruby Amethyst deck list by Ian over here. I haven't seen anybody try out this Elsa from the Reign of Jafar yet. It's a 4-cost inkable character, 3 strength, 4 willpower that says pay 1 ink, choose and discard a card, then you exert a chosen opposing character. Pretty nice. It's a little bit slower version of the Elsa Fit Spirit, but this will let you actually exert 2 characters on your 5 ink turn, which I think could be pretty powerful. And look at this. Shout out the Sorcerer's Spellbook. Love to see it. Haven't seen this card since set 2. And Madame Medusa making an appearance in Ruby Amethyst again at this 250 player tournament in this Ruby Amethyst top 8 deck list.